studio with a good friend and the visionary, the founder of the Dr. Haynes Collective, Dr. Sarah Haynes. A little bit about Dr. Sarah Haynes. She earned her PhD in clinical psychology at age 29. At age 31, she earned a postdoctoral fellowship at Georgetown School of Medicine and an invite to join the clinical research faculty. As we think about some of the leadership roles that Dr. Sarah Haynes has participated in, she cultivated relationships with LP investors and portfolio founders to support continued long-term growth toward IPO. Additional endeavors include founder, CEO, chair, and COO roles with the Pishavar Family Office, Pishavar Haynes Foundation, Boat Mobility with co-founder Usain Bolt, Olympic champion, and the Dr. Haynes Collective. After serving on the UNICEF Steering Committee, Dr. Haynes joined the UNICEF Board of Directors in 2020. Tech entrepreneur, philanthropist, educator, professor, activist. How about just all around great person? And certainly the best title of all, mother. Sarah, great having you here. Who do we have with us today?
We are so honored to be able to have Mori Taheripour here. She is a faculty at the Wharton School of Business. She's also a principal at MT Global Strategies, and she is one of the experts of Dr. Haynes Collective, which I founded last year to provide executive coaching and experts in various disciplines in STEAM, because they keep saying that there is not enough women in STEAM and underrepresented, which is true. However, there is a pipeline of incredible people that I know in my network, and I'm blessed and fortunate to know that include Mori. And she is an expert in teaching negotiations and dispute resolutions in the undergraduate and graduate programs at Wharton School at the University of Penn. She has also served as a faculty on the Legal Studies and Business Ethics Department and a 6-time recipient award for excellence in teaching. She's a co-founder of the Wharton Sports Business Initiative, and she also leverages her expertise in negotiation and diversity and inclusion with sports and business Fortune 100 companies, major sports leagues, foundations, and professional associations. Current and past clients include Goldman Sachs, Major League Baseball, MLB, NBA, NFL, and all the other acronyms, including UPS and Wells Fargo and Wasserman. She has extensive experience leading campaigns and initiative at an intersection of sports and the social change in both the public and private sectors. She was appointed the first ever senior advisor for sports and development in the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. And for 4 years, she served as a, and has been teaching advancement of the nation's international development policy. She joined the leadership ranks of the American Red Cross as well, and many, many, many more accolades I can add on here. But she is on the board of trustees of the Women's Sports Foundation, which is important, and is on Sirius XM, the Wharton Business School daily program, on ESPN, 30 for 30 documentary and covering entitled Broke. And I think it's really important to be able to capture your knowledge and a vast experience in the world of business, sports, and diversity and inclusion today. And we're so honored and proud to be here. And we have a very short, limited amount of time with you, so I want to make sure that we dive right in and really appreciate you being here today. I wanted to ask you, as the first question we're asking our experts, what are some of the adjectives that, if you could choose immediately, that would describe you, your life story, how it started, the middle, how it's going now, and what you want your legacy to be and remembered for? So if you could discuss those different adjectives as it relates to also the Dr. Haynes Collective. We based all of our work based on science and data-driven, but also most importantly on value-driven goals that relate to the 5 pillars of growth. Career and financial is one pillar. The second pillar is leadership and personal evolution. The third is health and wellness. The fourth is family and intimacy. And fifth is community and network. These are not in any particular order. It's just 5 different pillars that are important to have greater balance. And we want to talk about this idea or myth of perfect balance. And if you can dive in terms of using your adjectives to explain your life stories, and then we'll dive into the pillars as well and how you've been able to find as much balance in your life in those areas of Dr. Haynes Collective pillars. So it would be great to discuss and learn from you today.
So I'm really happy to be here. I should have for sure given you my very much shorter version of my bio. It's always really embarrassing to sit here and hear it. It's like almost uncomfortable. I'm like, who are they talking about?
And I forgot to mention the book that you launched also in the middle of COVID that's behind you. So if you can touch on that as well. Yeah, that one right there. It's important to support female authors and learn more and dive into your negotiation skills and learn how to negotiate based on your relationships and leveraging the human connection in the negotiation skills as well, which is an important part of the underserved to learn about not just being humble, but learning what your worth is and negotiating for it. So, all right, we'll get started. There's so much to talk about, but if you could describe adjectives in your life, how it started, where you're in the middle, and how it's going now, and how you want to be reminded, it would help us to kind of better know who you are, and if someone was going to describe you, how they would describe you.
Okay, so I'm just coming off teaching, about 5.5 hours of teaching. So it's interesting because all I do is tell them how to look at themselves and think about themselves, and now you're reversing it on me. So here I go. I would say the trajectory. So first generation Iranian American, we came to this country at the brink of the revolution. So I'm going to use that as sort of the early days, and just say probably shaken a bit, just given sort of the tumultuous moment and unsure and sort of not knowing what to expect, even though I'd been in this country before but visiting. So it was a whole different thing to sort of upend and move to a new country. So, but I was also really curious, right? There felt like a sense of maybe freedom only because I was growing up at that time, right? And curious about things around me. I'm going to fast forward then because of the time and just say I see the middle as maybe high school, college days, when I've experienced sort of life. Really, I'm growing up now. And I think that I would best describe myself as really unsure. Unsure because I was sort of following almost instructions as to how to live, right? My parents expected something of me. My father expected something of me. As you know, all too well, Vita, you know, they're in our culture.
Most immigrants.
You can be anything you want, Mori, as long as it's a doctor, right? Dream big, honey, dream big. Just be a doctor. So, you know, when you're told that and you're sort of following that path almost robotically, and that sort of carries through. I made great friends. I went to a great private school in New Jersey, had the privilege of going to Barnard College, Columbia University, and being surrounded by like the most amazing people. And yet there was some amount of my life that felt really unsure and robotic all at once, right? Because I wasn't really grounded. It was sort of the directionality that I was following was not really my own necessarily. And not having the courage to sort of step out of that, I just didn't know. I didn't know that I could. I felt the burden of living that life to somebody else's expectations, right? Well, suffice it to say, I am not a doctor. And at some point, my life sort of became my own. And with that, I would say where I see myself now, I would say grounded. I would say fearless, open, not judged really, and not worried about being judged, right? So and I'm proud of that. It's hard because you're constantly battling, and I'm getting emotional, I don't know why, but I'm constantly battling this notion of, did I let people down? Right. And that's the constant that's always here. And especially as my parents are aging. But then I look in the mirror and I sort of say, but you found your voice, right? And you stepped into your purpose. I walk in my purpose of my career. And that makes me very proud. As it regards sort of the pillars that you talk about, we've talked about, because of that evolution, I think that with respect to my career, it's given me the courage to reset, reevaluate, be resilient.
Mm.
I've made many mistakes, many, that could have set me back, and I could have just been down and never gotten up from it. But I've gotten up, and sort of here I sit. Because of that, I think. I've found my voice. So I think with regards to sort of leadership and my personal and professional evolution, I'm passionate about my values, about my convictions, and I stand in that, right? I lead with that. So even if the decision isn't right, I'll never regret it, right?
Right.
I think I'm most proud because I finally exercised sort of from a health and wellness perspective. I think that's probably my most proudest sort of area of growth as it regards the pillars. And that's from a place of sort of self-love, self-respect. I was diagnosed with MS in 2010, and it's never affected. I mean, at the beginning it did, but it's ever since it's never affected me to the point where I nearly forget, because I'm strong and I dedicated my life to taking care of myself and my own wellness. Not feeling like that was greedy or selfish,
Right.
but it was just love.
Yep.
So I don't know. I don't know if I've answered most of these. I mean, there's a whole lot more to that. I think when you practice self-love, you're present,
Right.
you're mindful, you're in that moment because you want to enjoy what's around you. And I do what I do professionally because I see myself as a healer. I see myself as somebody who understands and doesn't judge, and I commit myself to that. And like I said, I walk my purpose because I love what I'm doing, what I do. It makes me whole. Every classroom makes me better. So yeah.
That's great.
More the whole
There's my
concept of mentoring. You talked about not wanting to let someone down or feeling as if you sometimes, as you go through your leadership journey, as you've gone through your leadership journey, tell us about some of the mentors along the way that have helped you, again, just be where you are today.
Yeah, I think mentors, even if we don't call them that, there are people that step into your life that guide you in ways that maybe they're even unexpected. And that's why I don't even know if it's mentoring, because it wasn't even, I didn't necessarily ask, but I sit where I sit today. I do what I do today because somebody believed in me.
Yep.
And said, you know what, I think you should teach. Never in a million years, right? I am an introvert by nature. The thought of standing in front of a classroom would just gave me chills up my spine. I was like, you are insane, right? Insane. And he's like, just try it. I think it'll work. And, it's that notion of mentors to me, people that hold you up when you least expected or when you don't even believe it, that they can change everything for you. You just have to believe. You have to sort of surrender to that, and believe in yourself. And maybe it's because we don't see ourselves the way other people see us, and the stories we tell ourselves are not necessarily those of value. So, when somebody gives you a compliment, how many ways, do we deny ourselves the ability to just say thank you? And that's, I think, the secret behind it is just to say thank you and pursue those compliments, if you will, and those dreams and those ambitions because somebody opened that door for you. I think surrendering to that is really important.
I think that we both have that same experience in terms of being where we are because someone believed in you. Sometimes it comes from your family and uncles and aunties and, adopted aunties and uncles in the community. And it could be just someone who you happen to pass by and be able to tap into. At the Dr. Haynes Collective, people can actually access you and be able to tap into your knowledge and get consultation from you, which is unheard of unless you're a Wharton student and have been accepted to the program and gone in and so forth. So my goal in terms of the Dr. Haynes Collective and the Family Foundation, the Bishop R. Haynes Foundation, has always been to bring in the incredible people to be able to share the knowledge because our time in this world is so limited. And we know that to be true when you've gone through life trauma and revolution and living in a place where your life is threatened every day, we know that tomorrow is not promised. So when you look at your ability to be able to find this idea of balance and continuous growth, which is so important, how would you say, what would you say is your greatest achievements as it relates to that? You talked about your health and wellness and going through MS, which is so remarkable because, especially through COVID, we've all been so challenged to think about our health and wellness, make it a priority. Every day we remain masked, and the masks are going to be reinstituted with the new virus of the Delta variant. So it's a continuous issue now that's front of mind, where I think as Americans we've been programmed to continue to work, cut into your sleep, cut into your wellness. And I was guilty of it when I was, in the building mode for Bolt. But how have you been able to achieve the kind of your greatest achievements as it relates and find balance in those 5 different pillars as a framework?
There is none.
Exactly.
There is none. I mean, if I'm honest with you, because I don't necessarily believe that we live life finding that perfect balance. It's so imperfect, right? There's like balance in the imperfect. And what I mean by that is that what we have to be really conscious of, and I think why I can sort of get through it, is that you prioritize different things at different times. And then there's always the non-negotiables that don't even go on the scale, that just need your full-on attention at all times. And I consider that my health. And my family, honestly. But when you pull those non-negotiables out, then everything from work to your social life to whatever it is, right? And it's a constant, movement of the scale. And you just give of yourself where you can, and then you balance it out on the other side. And maybe there's more of you on another side that needs more of you, right? So all work and no play kind of thing is sort of speaks to that, right? You can't let the scale sit like this. There's always this constant, right? But the scale rarely sits perfectly balanced. And so that's why when people are like work-life balance, I'm like, it's actually work-life imbalance that you're just trying to manage. Right. And if we don't sort of say that to ourselves, we sort of punish ourselves, right? Because I need to know who has found that perfect balance. They're probably the same people that say we wake up every morning at 5 and by 7 o'clock we've achieved a million things. That is not me, right? So we forgive ourselves for those things, and then we praise ourselves for being able to get through and being able to achieve and finding balance, I think, in the imbalance.
Here's the ironic part. I've worked with Fortune top 20 executives, and the same, when I ask this question, many of them, when I ask them, what are your biggest achievements, there's a huge pause. They still don't believe that they've achieved much that's worthy of discussion, right? And you have a book behind you, that's like giving birth to a child. And you're faculty at Wharton, you got an MBA from Wharton, and when you look at all the things you still say, it's not me that have achieved all these things, right? And you just said that. And I think it's really important for, millennials. I work with a lot of them in Silicon Valley as well, and they're really changing how we look at work-life balance. And with remote working, that's a whole nother layer and conversation we can have on a different podcast. But I think what's important is to give that message is that there is a myth that there is a perfect balance, right? It's really about rebalancing and readjusting, right? For every day, every hour, being intentional about what do I do with this amount of time that I have today, and how do I organize my day to reflect my values.
Yes.
Not to be responsive to what Joe's doing or Mike's doing and
right.
Sally's doing or whatever else the world is doing, but what are my values, right? And how do I want to live my life? So when you make those decision points about your goals and motivation and your annual goals, it's really makes it a lot more clear about what you say yes to. And what most importantly, what you say no to, right? So you
what
can
I value,
right.
What we value as well, and how we adapt. Mori, we certainly want you to tell us about that book. Tell us about your book as well.
So another thing that somebody had talked me into, but the book is really just it sort of encapsulates my belief and my understanding and my philosophy around negotiations, which is really what I teach my students, is that this is not something that you have to act to be better at, right? In fact, it's best when you're completely yourself and you're completely authentic. But that's the work, right? That the work of being authentic and believing that you could show up that way is to believe that everybody can be a good negotiator. It's to believe that you have the skills because you do it every day, all day long. It's to know that sort of aggression and the headbutting is not really what wins, but it's really shifting that paradigm to say what really works, and what really works are empathy and kindness and connection and respect, and really sort of reimagining negotiations altogether and thinking about this in a way that brings us power, gives us our voice, as opposed to something that's fearful and anxiety ridden. So that's really the book. I didn't write it in a way that's prescriptive, because again, it should be authentic. So everybody has to find their own way, but they have to get out of their own way first and really start imagining their success and finding the courage to step into those moments of negotiations when we least expect it and we may not feel as courageous about. So it was supposed to make negotiations accessible, and it's supposed to make negotiations not scary, and it's supposed to make us all feel like we can be better and probably really great negotiators at it. If not, we may already be there, actually, and that's really what the book is all about.
That's excellent. I think every culture has a different idea of what negotiation looks like, and how much we value an item or a product. And when it comes to our own value, it's so hard to assess, right? And I work with high achievers with incredible backgrounds, but there is this fear of, if I ask for too much, that I'm going to exclude myself from the running. And there is a delicate balance of, being able to understand that based on your relationship and on, understanding the market as well, what your value is. So you take yourself out of, in terms of like your own personal, you say get out of your own way, is coming with data. Like, this is what it costs to live in a certain area. Now with remote living, you can live pretty much anywhere. So that becomes another factor to adjust to. But really understanding, as underrepresented individuals, we have learned to keep your head down, work hard. Somebody will recognize you. Be humble. Don't talk about yourself, and don't brag about yourself, because that's not attractive.
Right.
Right. And so how do you tell people about your value of what you've accomplished other than that, right? You got embarrassed at your bio and my bio, and it's a natural instinct when people talk about you to kind of like, okay, that's, you don't want to hear it, but it's important also in the idea of negotiation to figure out, how do we tell people it's okay to have the humble brag, right? To let people know what you've done and who you are. And I guess in terms of the last question that we'd like to ask you, I'll give it to Gail to lead on that. But it's important to be able to wrap up so people can learn more about your background and your experience. And every person has a different advice or perspective to give. So that's why it's important to talk to different disciplines and learn from each other.
And I'm just pleased and honored, ladies, to be in the midst of authentically successful women, because again, although you both have said, in terms of, okay, enough with this talking about me. Well, sorry, you did it, you earned it, and so own it. And so that's a powerful thing. Mori, last question we have with the time that we have today. The 5 pillars of the Dr. Haynes Collective. What's the best advice that you have been given within those 5 pillars?
I think I could put them all together and say that it wasn't necessarily said to me this way, but it's been delivered. I've received it in this way. And it's that you're enough. You are enough. That it's not the constant being something else, being more, we all have goals, we all want to achieve certain things, but I would not have realized those things. And whether it's my career, whether it's my health, whether any of those things, is that really sort of that appreciation of self, the just being, and we all have dreams of becoming and doing and all of that. I'm thinking of Michelle Obama's book, right? All of those things, but
Right.
the stopping and saying, but I am, I am enough as I am, and I have all the tools to become whatever I want to become, but just to appreciate, because if you constantly do, you'll never have that moment to appreciate. So I think I think it applies to all the pillars, and whether it's family or finance or your personal development, you have to understand your self-worth and really appreciate it and appreciate where you are, so that you have the resilience and the strength to keep moving forward.
Powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think absolutely what you said resonates. And I think what is important also to indicate here is that when we look at knowing and feeling that you're enough, like, to let people know that, it's not a final destination. Okay, I've arrived, I'm enough, but it's the continuous growth. You push yourself and challenge yourself to do something new. Guess what? You're going to feel like you have imposter syndrome because you're doing something new that you've never done before. And so understanding if the world is telling you you're not enough, right? You have to figure out, what are you good at internally that you know that you're strong in, your personality, your interests, your strength, but to be able to scaffold and build on that. And that's really the impetus for the Dr. Haynes Collective, is to really understand from a strength-based perspective that you have the capabilities to be able to build always, right? And we've never all feel like we've arrived, right? But I think in terms of being able to have the sense of acceptance is important, so that we can continue to ask people and learn from people and be able to envelop people in our goals and our community, so that everyone can help from an authentic perspective, that we're helping each other and learning from one another and adding value wherever we can, even if it's a smile, right? Something kind and connecting with people on that level. So and sharing your knowledge is an important one to today, and thank you for sharing it here today. We're here based in Miami, and I think today you might be, I don't know, in California or DC or
In
Philly.
DC, I wish I was in Miami.
So next time you're in Miami, we can have you here in the studios of
Live
Big
in
Brother,
studio.
and we can continue the conversation and learn more from you. So thank you for sharing and your knowledge and gracing us with your presence.
Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you.
My pleasure.
You are, what you do is very important. I used to sit on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters in Oakland, California, many moons ago.
We got to talk about that. Incredible.
Yeah,
I look forward to that. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for doing what you do. With love, my dear. I will see you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, thank
you
you.
again.